Yo, what's good, everybody? My name is Kevin, Kipngeno, and welcome to the Grace and Space podcast. We are glad that you are here. Did you miss us? We surely missed you. And I want to shout out a special group of people, the people who check out our content on every week. Every single week, the people who are faithful to go watch, share, subscribe as well. And if you're among those people, you are highly regarded. You deserve a medal. You deserve an award. You deserve an honors because you are doing this channel a great, and tremendous support. You are giving us the support that, man, it goes a long way. Thank you so very much for being here. Thank you so very much for always listening. Thank you as well for always inviting your friends over. And if someone invited you over and you are enjoying this podcast, why don't you consider inviting other people as well so that they too may come and enjoy this podcast that you listen to every other single week. Yeah? And it helps our community to grow as well. So if someone recommended this podcast to you, why don't you, in the comment section below today, write down the name of that person who recommended this podcast to you, and how do you like this podcast, or at least how do you like it so far? Because it keeps getting better and better and better and better. Because I promise you that the only way it's only up from here now. Yes, and yeah, my name is Kevin, Kipngeno. You can follow me through all my social media handles. On Instagram, it's at KIPNGENO.KEVIN. That's at kipngeno.kevin. On Twitter, it's at KIPNGENO_Nivek, or Kevin written backwards. So it's at Kipngeno_Kevin _Nivek, I'm sorry. And then on Facebook, it's just Kipngeno Kevin. Yeah. Also, this show is independent. So this show has its own social media handles. Go check out Grace and Space at Grace and Space Podcast on Instagram, at Podcast Grace on Twitter, and on Facebook at the Grace and Space Podcast. Go like our page and recommend more people to come and like our page, because that way you help us to grow. And what a beautiful way to build our community. Yes, so this is a new week and I have something very exciting for you. I hope that you will be able, one, to learn, and two, to also be equipped to use the knowledge that we are going to share today, and use it wisely as well to tackle your everyday, just normal everyday life. Yes. So today we are talking about something very close to my heart. Yes, that's one of it as well. And also something that will be an eye opener for you. So I hope this will be that podcast that changes your life. So welcome to the show already. Let's kick it. My name is Kevin, Kipngeno. Yo, welcome to the podcast episode. Yes, today is a good day to share a podcast with you and share a podcast with someone else that you know. By the way, before going any further, do you have a friend who you would totally recommend this podcast to, and you haven't done so already? Why don't you go ahead and do that right now? Don't wait. Yeah, just click that share button. There you go. Thank you. So, welcome to today's episode. And today we are talking about something that a lot of people, if not most people, experience. And it's something as well that's very present in our culture, in our world today. I wanted to to tell you something like, I want you to guess the title for our podcast today. Not the title, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you to guess what we are talking about today in our podcast, but the title already sold us out, because we needed a we needed the title so that someone else could be, who's interested, can listen to this podcast. So let me give you a little story about this podcast before I give you the juice of the show. So about this podcast, a lot of the ideas that you're going to listen to on this podcast are things, one, you could have heard somewhere else, or two, these are new ideas for you. You, both the person who's hearing this for the very first time or the person who's hearing this for the 100th time, It's okay. Welcome to our podcast episode. What happens is a lot of times as we grow, as we learn, we need reminding. So if you're going to be listening to this as the fifth time, the sixth time, the seventh time, whatever, whatever amount of times you've had this topic, it's okay to remind yourself. It's okay to look at things from a different perspective, or maybe someone else said it different, and today we are going to tackle it differently. So, and if this is your very first time, I would love to welcome you and to welcome you to such ideas. And I hope that these ideas create just a spark, not just a spark, create a spark and a flame in you to go do more research and also to go educate more people. And most important of all, other than just educating yourself and educating other people, our desire as the Grace and Space podcast is to have you have a transformed life, have you knowledgeable in all these things, and have you living having some grace and having some space for yourself because you really need to learn a lot. And I too over here really need to learn a lot. And when we learn together, we help to build a society that is healthy, a society that we can thrive in, a society where we as the people have have grace and space for each other. Yeah. Yes. I want to say a beautiful society for every single one of us, for every color, for every race. Mm, yes. And about the podcast as well. About the about having other people on the podcast episode. I know you're looking forward to it, and it hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen. The reason this hasn't happened yet is because we are having only one set of microphone. It's actually my earphones, and I mentioned this a while back in some maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago. So I mentioned that this time for this new season, we're actually going to use my earphones to record this show. This other set of microphones weren't doing as good, or I rather discover I discovered rather that I could get as just as quality of a podcast using my earphones. So I let them go. Like I felt like I had employed those headphones or those that microphone. Feels like I let them go. And now the new set that I'm using are good. The only trouble that I have with is that they're a cheap pair. So the quality of sound that I hear might not be the richest, but we have hacks and tricks to make sure that your podcast really sounds great. And if this podcast is really sounding great for you, why don't you go ahead and give us a thumbs up? Yes. Thank you so very much. So let's kick it already. It's a long intro. So many words. Let's come to an end. Today we are talking about the anti-mistake culture. Have you heard this somewhere? The anti-mistake culture. What are your first thoughts about hearing this anti-mistake culture? I'll give you some room to think about it, as I think as well. There's this day I was going to school. Actually, I was in school, sorry. There's this day I was in school. It was during the exam period. So I had this idea about we are so afraid of making mistakes. And not only making mistakes, but we always want to have the surest route out. You can say route or route. We always want to have the surest path. And I was walking in the streets of our school, and I took out my phone, then typed this in my notepad that we are scared to make mistakes. And this is what I'm calling the anti-mistake culture. This is the anti-mistake culture that I'm talking about. I hope not that at least right now you have built an image or a representation of what we are talking about. This is a culture that tells you that everything should be perfect. This is a culture that doesn't let you to be innovative. This is a culture that doesn't let you to grow. This is an anti-grace in space culture. It's called the anti-mistake culture. It's present everywhere. And one of the places that this culture is very present is in our schools. I'll let that sink in. One of the places where the anti mistake culture is very present and it's taught and it's pressed on for years and years and years since a tender age to when someone is an adult is in the education system or school. Someone grows up, or I grow up, always knowing not to make mistakes, and mistakes are punishable, mistakes have consequences. And instead of learning from my mistakes, I've always gotten punished for my mistakes. And this, I'm just talking about the education system. I'm talking about the schools. We haven't gotten to our families. We haven't gotten to the bigger society. We haven't gotten to the social media aspect of it. We're just hitting it home at the place, not home actually. Yes, home. We're hitting home the point, but school, but in school. For all of us, we go to school from as young as we can learn and stay there for as old as we can still learn because there's no end to it. You can still go to campus when you're 60. As long as you can learn and give the right answers, the education system will be so welcoming to you to take all your retirement money and still press this anti mistake culture on you. Is this culture healthy? What are the effects of this culture to us right now? Are we experiencing some of the things that this culture has taught us? Are we experiencing what is it called? Limitations because of this culture? Do you think this culture fuels a lot of fear in us about exploring certain things? Over the weekend, I thought I wasn't going to mention this in our podcast because I normally try to leave out everything that's very personal and especially everything that involves now family in the podcast. Over the weekend, we had a conversation with my brother and sister. And one of the things that was being pressed on, or one of the things that I heard repeatedly, was that um, it's time to do. Sorry, I'm trying to put it in the context of the anti-mistake culture. That this is the surest way to earn your revenue. That whatever you have going on right now, for an instance, I have this podcast that I enjoy spending my time over here. The reward of this podcast might not be monetarily, might not be cash, because it's true. There's this time I was listening to a podcast and someone was saying this podcast is called the Transparency Podcast. The Transparency something. This lady is she's an author. She runs a podcast with her husband. If you know sorry, if you know Ishan Bagandi, or what is his name, Ishan Bagandi. Yeah, those people who listen to hip hop, you probably know this guy, Ishan, and his wife Zara. If I know, let me shout out Pius Neri too. I know you could be the only person listening to this podcast, and Obilo. Those two people could be the only people who know who Ishan is. So they were having this conversation with with a wife over the podcast, and it's called the Transparency Podcast, or it's called Truth. I've forgotten how it's called. If I remember, okay, I'll have it in the show notes. Okay. Nowadays, I'm like, I'll have it. Okay, for the YouTube people, it's the link in the description. That's where we're having it. But for the people who listen to this over the podcast application, it's called show notes. So it's down there. So it's called Transparency the Podcast. Yes, that's the name with Zara and Ishan. So in this podcast, Zara mentioned that her book sales were at zero, and I connected with it a lot. I was like, that could happen. She also mentioned that their podcast wasn't paying them. And I was like, that could happen as well. A lot of the people, I'm just digressing off what we were going to talk about today, but I think it's related in a way. A lot of the people whom you listen to, or a lot of the people whom you hear, a lot of the people you watch, they always have this picture of themselves that they are earning. I'm so sorry. They are earning. They have a good life. They have no stress. Their book sales are on 100. They're like the New York's, what is it called? Bestseller. Yeah. They have sold kind this amount of copies. Maybe you have a book that you want to release, and you're competing with people such as Michelle, who have a documentary and a book at the same time. And that competition isn't fair. Okay. Anyway, so I learned that if I was able to share my story over here, it was going to be more relatable, because when they shared their stories, I was like, oh, huh, this could happen, and still this is happening. Oh, so there's no pressure for me about this. Oh, okay. I can take it slowly. Or this other thing. Have you ever found out that if your friend shares with you a story about them or about themselves, which you really relate with, you find it easy, and you stress yourself less about it than when someone who is quote unquote a motivational speaker shares with you a story. They have you motivated and fired up for 3 seconds, and then after the 3 seconds are over, you look at your life and you're like, oh no. Things are going south. And talking about motivational speakers, I know, okay, well, maybe one of the things that motivational speakers normally emphasize on is waking up. And I remember us doing an episode on waking up, and that episode, did I motivate you to wake up early, or how you doing? I want to tell you that right now we are okay. I normally use a if you ever hear me on my show and I use the word we, it's either I'm referring to me or me and someone else. So for this instance, when I'm saying we are waking up early, I'm only referring to me. I'm waking up early, the early of 6 a.m., 7 ish. Yes, I think that's good enough, because I can get some things done in the morning and then have other things as well rolling through the day. And one of them is like, this is what we're doing, recording a podcast. And yeah, so it's good. It's good. At least for that one, I motivated myself, and I'm having some grace for myself. So I don't wake up at 3 a.m. But we moved from waking up at 8 and close to 9 to now waking up at 6, close to 7, and being able to do the 1, 2, 3s. So that's the news flash that's going on. Yeah, so let's get back to our podcast, the anti mistake culture. The anti mistake culture is this culture that doesn't allow you to make mistakes. The anti mistake culture is a culture that, now, like for an instance, the one I told you about, how some motivational speaker can motivate you to do something and expect you not to fail at it. The anti mistake culture is this culture that punishes you for your mistakes rather than allowing you to learn from your mistakes. The anti mistake culture is this culture that doesn't allow you to grow as a person. You guys, let me recommend another podcast to you. Go look for the Stumbling World podcast. Hi. Do you love this podcast and wish you would do more than just listen? Why don't you reach out to us on our various social media platforms? Find out ways in which you can support us financially, with resources, with ideas, with criticism, with whatever that you can give, your time too, because this helps us to grow as a community. Remember, this isn't just my podcast, it's our podcast. This is the Grace in Space podcast. My name is Kevin, Kipngeno. I'm your host. Now back to the show. They talk a lot about the normal things. What they say in their show is that we all stumble, but now our show is about learning how to stumble well or learning how to make mistakes and grow in them. And pro tip, for especially the believers who listen to this show, a lot of this podcasts that I share are people in the faith. Actually, most, if not all of them, that I've shared because I listen to faith-based podcasters and couples and families. So if you're wondering, should I listen to these people or I'm going to listen? And then in the middle of it, I hear some things that they're pushing their agendas, or no, they're actually clean podcasts that you can tune into, and I'll have them on the show notes today. Okay. Yes. So this anti-mistake culture is that culture now that doesn't allow you to make mistakes, literally. And one of the places that we've mentioned that this anti-mistake culture is really promoted is in school. The other places as well that this anti-mistake culture is fueled up is around us. Just look. Have you ever found yourself like in a situation like mine where you are doing something, but because the people around you have never seen profit in that, they push you towards another path? I read this right now, just a few minutes before I got to doing this podcast, that what happens a lot of times in this anti-mistake culture, you end up doing the things that the other people instruct you. You finish your school, you do this, you do that, and instead of taking risk, you do the norm. You become a normal. You end up fitting in, but you never have joy in all that. You never have joy. You never have fulfillment. Because who knows? Take for an instance, this is what we are running right now. I have school and I'm proud of school. A few days ago, a few days ago, I was very happy that I was in school, and I am still very happy because in this higher education, I get to learn a lot of things that I couldn't have learned if I was out there. And then there was this famous line in this song. If you listen to Propaganda, Propaganda is a hip hop artist, prop on Twitter. So if you listen to him, probably just two people are going to know him. That's Obilo, and shout out to Pius and Deritu. So probably you two guys are just the only people who are going to know this guy. And if you if you're out there and you know this two in this guys, man, shout out to you as well. It's only that I don't know your name yet. Sure, pros. So prop. Okay, and there's another guy is called Shobaraka, but we're not talking about prop. What did he mention? Oh God, what did I forget? I've forgotten what I wanted to say. I have forgotten what I wanted to say. Oh Lord. Hey, it's okay to make that mistake. Funny thing, if you are among the contacts that are in my phone, this I'm not going to forget what to say. Today I wanted to tell you something, but I forgot. And I made a video of how I forgot. And right now, this is happening in the podcast as well. I forgot what I wanted to tell you. It's just something small. I got jumbled up with all the words that I was saying. This is what happens as well if you speak a lot. You get jumbled up and your words cover up everything that you had in your mind. Mm. So let's get back to the anti mistake culture. So we experience this in our society, in for an instance, in the places where people have pushed you and you don't find that fulfillment. And I think as well, one of the things that fuels this anti-mistake culture is fear in us, let alone the leave alone the society, leave alone part of the society is of course social media. where social media shows you this perfect image of people, and everyone, they're called quote unquote Instagram worthy pictures. Have you taken Instagram worthy and then they have filters, then they have all of that. So inside society, um social media is one of those places, with one of those things that has fueled the anti-mistake culture, where now when you see people who've done things perfectly, the people who are just, they have the nicest clothes, they have the nicest cars, no one posts in their pajamas, or when they do they still look cute. And then when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, oh no. And do you know what's so funny? There's a way with phones where these cameras, what happens is you look at yourself in the mirror, you look so good. Then you pick up your selfie camera and then you look at yourself, you're like, oh no, those are two different people. So I'm just saying, now for the case of, you see, you go on IG, then you see someone when in their PJs they still look good. Then you go to the mirror. The mirror at least should give you some validation. Still ain't none. So let's come back. This anti-mistake culture is fueled a lot also by the fear that it is in us. That is in us. And we're going to make a podcast episode about fear as well very soon. So we are going to address fear, where it comes from, and the only way that you can overcome, the only way to deal with fear is just facing it. There's no other way. There's no running away. It catches up with you. So you have to face it. That's another episode. So fear is one of the things as well that really fuels up this anti-mistake culture. This anti-mistake culture is, you can also call it this perfect, quote unquote, this perfect, flawless, yeah, that kind. You can call it all sorts of names, but we chose today anti-mistake culture. So this anti-mistake culture is fueled by fear, and a lot of fear that is in us. Fear that, what if I did this? What's going to happen? Fear of taking a new route, fear of starting up, fear of going out. With the anti-mistake culture, it's really hard to start up something. Take for an instance, let me use the podcast because this is something that you're listening to and something which will be closer home. I can use a different example. If you want to be a great podcaster, have a great show, have everything, have the millions of listeners every single week, you don't start at the top. You begin where first your quality is so low. You only have two listeners, that's yourself and yourself. And then you come years later, you find out that doing an hour's length of show doesn't work because people sleep at around 6 minutes and then they dial another video. Like, these are the things that you learn through the journey. And by the way, the anti-mistake culture never lets you appreciate the journey. If anything, it always emphasizes on the destination and never on the process. An anti-mistake culture, instead of letting you win, it will give you tricks. Okay, this is what, no, not like that. Inst- there's no game that you're going to just win, 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 unless you're Manchester United. Okay, I'm kidding. I'm throwing stones. Not John Stones from the other team. No, no. Okay, I'm kidding. So, in life or in everything that you do, you're never ever going to get a win, 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 win. There's going to be some losses. And if you're going to get a win, 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 then you're not experiencing anything like journey wise. What you're doing is using a trick. And in the trick, you might have the final reward of winning, but you don't have the reward of the journey. And I mentioned this to my girl this week that let's take the journey as if it was the destination. And then we'll have a lot of fun along the way because we are not look we know what our goal is, but we don't lose it at we know what our goal is, so we stress about it right now. Instead, we enjoy this journey where we are walking currently to the time now when we will hit our goal and be like, we had a good journey all through, both in mistakes, both in triumphs, in every season. Yeah. And I think a lot of people as well, because of this anti mistake culture that has been groomed in them since they were young, it's very hard to move on. It's very hard to be, to allow yourself to make mistakes. Like we mentioned about fear just a few seconds ago. And fear is one of those things that won't let you make mistakes. And fear is fueled by, or fuels rather, the anti mistake culture. So, in a world where in a world full of potential, you find less is done. And like that metric of 80/20, 20% of the people, how does that work? 20% feeds the 80%, or something like that. The work of the 20% is the one being benefited by the 80% instead of all of us working together. I believe this is just digressing out now. I always had this fear that if everyone was working, then there would be less money in the economy because everybody will have cash. But I don't think that's true. I think instead there'll be a balance. We won't have the rich getting more richer and the poor getting poorer. At least we'll have a balance. But if we have the rich, yeah, they're rich, but they're not getting richer as the poor get poorer. The poor will be empowered. And then I believe that every single person has a purpose and a God designed goal for their life. And if everybody was to give out everything that had inside, that was placed inside of them, the dreams, the ambitions, this world will be so beautiful. Such a beautiful world to live in. But instead, if we are hammered with the anti mistake culture, how will someone ever grow? How will you let someone fail the first time and the second time and the 10th time and still be willing to pick them up and show them it's okay? This anti mistake culture probably won't end today. It won't end tomorrow. It might not end 10 years from now. Because if we're still having the same education system, if we're still having the same society thinking the same way, we'll probably never see an end to this. But if you as an individual choose to see things differently, not even for other people, but for yourself, to let yourself fail. And people don't like the people don't like the mistake, the now opposite of anti-mistake, the mistake culture, because you have to own up for your mistakes. People don't like owning up for their mistakes. So for you who wants to go now this route of allowing yourself to make mistakes, allowing yourself to grow, one of the things that you'll have to do is own up. If you need you who kicked or who destroyed whatever it is, own up, say it's me who did that. It's me who put this project this way because I thought this was good. It's me who changed the name over there because I thought it looked better on this other side. It begins with owning up. And when you own up, you don't beat yourself down, but you own up and learn from it. If, say, for an instance, you were climbing the stairs with your eyes closed and you took 100 steps and then you fell in the 100th step, maybe you went to the right. Say this was a game. I love games, though I don't play a lot. Say, for an instance, if this is a game where you climb the stairs, then you either turn right or left. So in this stairs, there are 100 steps. And when you get to the top, you either have to turn right or left. So for level one, say, okay, for trial one, you took the 100 steps, then turned right, and then you found out that instead of going to a room, you fell down. So you have to do it again. So you start from the ground, you go up, and then when you get to step 100, you don't turn right, you turn left. And that's where you find the room. That's the same thing with mistakes. Today you'll not get it, but if you learn from it, then you'll have a lot of benefit. Because if you beat yourself down after falling after the 100 stairs, if this was a game, then you'll never have the chance of going up again. Most people deny themselves. Say, if this was a competition, if this was an opportunity, most people deny themselves even a chance to win because they never show up. And the reason they never show up is because they are afraid of making mistakes. I wanted to be like sis or girl, I don't know. But if you're out there and the reason you're not showing up is because you're afraid to make mistakes, then you're making the biggest mistake. You're slowly digging your grave. You're slowly going down. And I love how the Bible has this scripture which says time and opportunity happens to everybody. You don't have forever. No. At least on this earth, you don't have forever. So if you let the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and counting opportunities go past you because you're afraid of making mistakes, then you're making the biggest mistake. And mistakes are a pathway to growth. This coming week, I want us to talk about the benefits of making mistakes or the benefits of mistakes. I wanted to have it in this podcast, but the anti-mistake culture, we had to first of all clean on it and rub it so that people know that there exists something called the anti-mistake culture, and it's very present, and it's been pressed on them since they were young. And right now is the time to grow. I remember as well that the previous week we mentioned a little about seasons, and we are yet to do a podcast more deeper about seasons. And I promised that we were going to do that with a guest around. So for the time being where we don't have a microphone, an extra microphone, we are going to let that be on hold until very soon, where now when we will be able to have someone on board and discuss seasons with them. Yeah. And I'm still waiting for someone to message me and see who are we going to rock this show with. Because if you message me, we can have as many people. Yeah? Yeah, don't be afraid. Yes, like for today, if we're talking about the anti-mistake culture, don't be afraid. Make that mistake. At least show up. Show up to our show. You never know. You never know. You never know what's ahead of you. Yeah, so with that, we have that coming up. But for this coming week, what we have is we're going to do mistakes further. And this feels like a lecture now. But it's okay. We're going to we talk about mistakes more and more and more. And then the other weeks we got great, really great content coming up. I don't want to reveal that yet, but as for now, we're going to handle mistakes for this and the next episode. So be on the lookout for that. So that's been it for today. A lot of the ideas that have been shared here are not complete, maybe, and I'll require you to go do more research on it, go read more books about it, go read articles online, go educate yourself, go make yourself a better person, go make those mistakes. You have the license to fail. That's been it for today. My name is Kevin, KIPNGENO, and thank you so very much for joining me on the show today. It's been lovely having you on board. And right now, our flight is coming to land. And please remember to support our show. Please remember to recommend this show to someone else. Please remember to subscribe. Please remember to hit us up on your favorite social media handle. Please remember to hit us up through any social media medium that you use, either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, at the Grace in Space Podcast, or on Twitter at the podcast_Grace. My name is Kevin, KIPNGNO, and I gotta go now. So peace. Love y'all.